Who are the tight ends that are skyrocketing up our draft board for the 2023 season? We're about to tell you. Welcome back, in-game community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're here to talk tight end, particularly those tight ends that are going way up in value and that we're going to have our eyes on for the 2023 season in fantasy football. I think we have to start with a guy that thought maybe he'd have a chance to kind of restart his career in Jacksonville. But did you really think Evan Ingram was going to be a top 5 fantasy tight end this season? And do you think he can keep it up?
Definitely did not see Evan Ingram as a top 5 tight end this season, especially with the way the season started, right? He was doing nothing for many weeks. His passing game was doing nothing. It looked like maybe Trevor Lawrence wasn't going to make that leap. Maybe Doug Peterson wasn't the QB whisperer, but the second half of the season, this passing game got it going. Trevor Lawrence got it going. And Evan Ingram was a huge part of that. There was many games where Evan Ingram led this team in targets, receptions, touchdowns, yards, everything, which is rare to see from a tight end. Evan Ingram was one of those guys. Remember when he was drafted, people talk about all the hype with Kyle Pitts, and I don't think Evan Ingram had the hype that Kyle Pitts quite did, but he had a lot of hype out of the draft. And after his rookie year, he was really hyped up because he had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen from a tight end. Then just really was disappointing year after year, stuck in New York with the Giants, with a terrible offense, a terrible passing game. But it looks like he's found a good home. This Jacksonville passing attack, you got to be feeling great about them going into next season. Trevor Lawrence looks way more comfortable now. Doug Peterson has this passing attack rolling. I think Evan Ingram keeps this going next year. No reason not to. He's got the talent. He just needed the situation, and it looks like he has a situation now.
During the second half of the season, especially down the stretch, fantasy playoff time, he really came through at a time where, look, a lot of the top tight ends were banged up, not even playing. Of course, that huge monster game, hopefully you started him, against Tennessee, he went for 39 fantasy points in PPR. Followed up with 14 points, 18 points. And then, of course, week 17 was a dud against Houston. But look, they just didn't need to pass the ball in that game. It's easy to kind of pick and choose and say, oh, you just selection bias here. You're just picking the last half of the season, these few games. We're talking about a team, new coach, a quarterback who basically was thrown into the fire and under the bus last year. It took some time for this offense to develop. Evan Ingram on a new team, new system. We saw what they are capable of. The second half of the Jags, I don't see any reason they can't carry it forward and maybe even be better in 2023. Speaking of a tight end on a new team, mid-season trades don't always happen involving tight ends, but TJ Hockenson went from Detroit to Minnesota. Upgrade for him, but also upgrade in terms of fantasy. He suddenly got more usage and somehow finished as a tight end 2 on the season. Is he now, Chris, in that elite tier of tight ends?
I don't know if I'm ready to go that high, but I think he's definitely, in that next tier of tight ends, those very good tight ends. How about that? Evan Ingram breaking out was surprising, but TJ Hockenson breaking out for the Vikings was more surprising because nobody saw this trade coming. And remember, he had that one, crazy big game for Detroit where every wide receiver was hurt. DeAndre Swift was hurt and he went off. But he really did nothing in Detroit other than that one game. And then he went to Minnesota and became a huge part of this offense. Oftentimes being the number 2 target behind Justin Jefferson. I'm not worried about Irv Smith. I'm not worried about any other tight end here. I'm not worried about any of the other receivers. Adam Thielen only going to be getting older. Who knows if he might even retire after this year? Who knows? You got to think TJ Hockenson is going to remain, with a big target share in a pass-heavy offense with a bad defense that's going to force them to pass it a lot. Not ready to put TJ Hockenson in that elite upper tier of tight ends, which really, let's be real, these days it's just Travis Kelce. But I think he's in the next tier of very good tight ends.
I don't think I would pull the trigger on him like super early, the first 3 or 4 rounds necessarily. But he's a guy that if you do land him in a draft, he's a set and forget. You shouldn't have to worry. It's kind of funny. He went from Detroit, which had the Sun God, a solid player, but not much else in terms of target competition. And he wasn't doing anything great. And all of a sudden he goes to a team where he's got Justin Jefferson there and he does better. But that's why they got him, is because they know that behind Jefferson, they really didn't have a great second option. Thielen's not what he used to be. KJ Osborne, he's fine, but he's not exactly a target hog. Hockenson is essentially their number 2 receiver, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. So unless the Vikings make major upgrades at defense, they're still going to have to pass the ball a fair amount. I feel pretty good about Hockenson's chances to repeat as a top 3 tight end. And finally, let's talk about a guy in Chicago who had a big resurgence in terms of touchdown regression, and it's hard not to go up from 0. But Cole Kmet wound up scoring 7 times in the season on part of a hopefully improving offense with Justin Fields. How good do you feel about Kmet?
I feel pretty good about Kmet. I mean, remember, he scored 7 touchdowns. I mean, how many touchdowns did Justin Fields even throw for this year? It wasn't that many. This isn't an offense that threw the ball a lot. This wasn't a very pass-heavy offense. And the nice thing about the Bears, when looking at the Bears, this could be a drastically better team next year because they're going to go into 2023 with $100 million of cap space. They got the number 1 pick. You got to think they're probably going to trade down from there, accrue even more draft capital. This could actually be a team that goes from a really bad team to a really good team next year. We see it every year in the NFL. The Jaguars are a perfect example this year. They could be the Jaguars of 2023. They have the resources to do it. Justin Fields, you got to think he's only going to get better, especially as a passer. You got to like Cole Kmet. If you're waiting on tight end, if you're doing what we said in that video and you're not going early tight end and you're waiting, I think Cole Kmet is a great option. Not sure where he'll be drafted, but if you can get him later, definitely a great option.
The Bears should be, assuming they spend their money and their draft capital the right way, should be vastly improved next year. Now, one thing that people might say, kind of an argument against Kmet, is like, well, they've got to do something at receiver, right? They're going to draft a stud or they're going to sign somebody free agency. First of all, the free agent class at wide receiver really isn't that impressive. Like, this is not going to be a massive upgrade waiting for them. And whoever they draft is still, it's going to be a rookie. It's going to take a little bit of time here. I don't think that Kmet's just going to all of a sudden not get targeted. But also, let's look at guys we've already talked about. TJ Hockenson, he's got Justin Jefferson on his team. He still finishes number 2 tight end. So it doesn't matter how much the Bears upgrade. It might just make Kmet better because he has to shoulder less of the load, and he'll be more open because the defense will actually have to worry about some other players on the field. All right, those are the tight ends we're targeting in 2023. But what about quarterback? Check out who's skyrocketing up our draft boards right here.